finally have recognition and acknowledgement at the level of the UN was huge for us. Being involved in this campaigning from the perspective of somebody who's lived the sex trade has been a roller coaster now for 14 years of my life. And there have been intense moments of pain and loss, and intense moments of joyful wins. And Dreams Report was one of those joyful wins we were so pleased. Some of you will know of me and my work, and a lot of you won't, so I'll just give you a brief overview. I got into prostitution from the perspective of a homeless young teenage girl in Dublin, in Ireland. I saw the same thing there and then back in the early 90s that I've seen everywhere in my campaigning since. And it was poverty, as Reen said earlier on. Always financial lack, always precarious living situations, always young girls and women coming from broken homes. There were various negativities of all kinds in our histories. And that's, I guess, the first thing you need to look at if you're entertaining the idea that this is a matter of agency and choice, because you have to ask that question, as Ray said earlier. What it basically boils down to is, if this is a matter of autonomy and choice, why is it populated by those with the least choices? Nothing about the mythology of the happy sex worker makes sense when you start to peel back the layers. They're very simple questions to ask. And I sometimes, honestly, I wonder about us as a species. We're so easy to fool, you know. It's very, very easy, it appears to me, to collectively have people believe in something on a surface level, on an intellectual level, that they know on the sensory level is simply untrue. You know, I look out into this group and I see, as I always see at these events, a majority of women with a sprinkling of men. And I encourage the women to ask themselves, how would they feel about having their bodies as laid open to the public as any bus or train station? Because that is the reality. That's what prostitution is. And I encourage the men in the audience to wonder how they would feel about the bodies of the women they love most in their own personal lives, their mothers, their daughters, their sisters, their female friends. I don't say wives or girlfriends for a reason, by the way. We all understand sexual jealousy and why any person would not want the body of their own partner used. But I talk about daughters and sisters and mothers simply because it's a platonic form of love, and there's something important in that. That if the body of a person you simply love but no sexual connection to, is somebody who you wouldn't want treated this way, well then that should be enough evidence for you that you know that this is an intrinsically damaging, harmful, humiliating way for a person to be treated. So those are the kind of thoughts I think we need to get into thinking, and the questions we need to get into asking, because it's not until you answer those questions that you understand the shape and nature of what prostitution is. We have to understand what this actually is before we can hope to confront it. You know, and there are many ways to confront it, and I think legislation is certainly one of the most important among them, probably the most important. You know, I think it's a historic moment. It's a very important time that this conversation is happening here with the cooperation of an Italian anti-violence centre, because the violence of prostitution, the violence that is prostitution, is something that's been concealed throughout time. You know, I think it was one of the most painful things for us, to be honest with you. The idea that we weren't quarter or harmed on a par with non-prostituted women, as if, you know, something in us was so inhuman that we weren't capable of being quarter harmed. That's how it felt anyway. That's how I received it. I think we have got to keep pushing also with the public conversations, because we have to change minds. We can't just change laws, we have to change minds. And I know that legislative change has a big impact on public opinion, so that's an aspect of it. But I think that these conversations have got to keep on happening at a high level in the UN and beyond, because it's not until we get there. Let me give you a little example of what I'm talking about, because I'm meandering a little bit. I was asked recently to take part in a documentary in England. It hasn't been aired yet, so I'll be a little bit guarded about what I say about it. But anyway, it's there's a conversation in this documentary about prostitution and prostitution historically. And what I discovered is that back in the 1800s in Victorian England, prostituted women were referred to as unfortunate women. And I was thinking, wow, well, that's interesting, because first of all, at least they were honest, you know, that was the first thought that came to my mind. But I got into thinking about this and about how much has changed and how much is still the same. So what's changed is that no people call a woman in prostitution an unfortunate woman anymore. That's it. We've put that level of honesty in the bin, but we've also altered our language in order to conceal and to, you know, polish a veneer over the top of what's happening. But the truth has been inverted in the meantime. When people are talking about prostitution as agency and choice in the present day, and as prostitute women as sex workers. So that's what's changed. I mean, the actual reality of what's happened has been pulled inside out. But what's still the same is that the focus is still on the woman. No matter what the terms are, the focus is still on the women. Here we are 150 years later, and we're still putting on our focus on the women. So I think that's the first change I think we need to make, is to start looking at the far larger number of men that are involved in this issue. Thank you very much.